Greetings from Portimao, Portugal. We're at the Algarve race circuit, and we're with the 2025 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS. With me is Stuart Wood, Chief Engineer of Triumph Motorcycles. Stuart, the thing about the Speed Triple, last year, 2024, it celebrated its 30th anniversary. Tell us about how important the Speed Triple is to Triumph.
Well, great, it's huge. Speed Triple, as you say, started all those years ago, and it was a phenomenal bike. It was built out of passion. It was a bike that we built because a roadster, an unfaired bike, but built as a sports bike, was just so much fun. You know, so engaging. Right. Everything was sort of faired sports bikes at the time, and we chanced on just how much fun this was, and that was coupled with three-cylinder engine, all that torque and character.
Right. So the Speed Triple really kind of helped invent the street fighter category, but over the past 30 years, it's really evolved. It's gone from, you know, really kind of a rough and ready bike. It had some pretty wild paint jobs in the past, but it's really evolved into a proper sports bike. And now with the 2025, you've got really what's probably the most advanced Triumph motorcycle in your lineup. So let's talk a little bit about what makes the 2025 Speed Triple 1200 RS what it is today.
Okay, well, you start with a three-cylinder engine. High performance three-cylinder engine, but it's not just about the power. We've got 183 PS, but we've got 128 Newton meters of torque, and that's responsive as well. So that's low down in the rev range, and it's always accessible. So you've got the character, you've got the feel, you've got the punch. That's the muscle that the Speed Triple's always had. But it's refined as well. We've made a very, very refined engine, both the actual mechanical elements, but the tune as well. So the bike can be everything. It gives you that really refined running for when you're traveling, but when you're on it, you really know you've got all that character. The technology is critical, absolutely critical, to allow you to access all of that performance with confidence. It's all about confidence. We don't want you to feel electronics and systems intervene. We don't want that. We want you to enjoy a motorbike, okay? But it works.
Well, it's interesting is because today we tested the bike on the street, tomorrow we'll test it on the track. It just happened to be a rainy day, so we had very wet, damp conditions. I spent most of the day riding in rain mode. We've got what are really, you know, sporty tires, but you know, in terms of the power delivery as well as the confidence I was feeling, you know, in and out of corners in, like I said, less than ideal conditions. One of the things I'm curious about is you now have a semi-active suspension on this bike. Now you've had semi-active suspension on other motorcycles, you know, Tiger 1200, but this is a much more elevated system. So in terms of the electronics, talk a little bit about the Öhlins Smart SC3 electronic suspension.
Okay, well, the Öhlins system is basically, as Öhlins is, performance-based. But remarkably, they've managed to offer us a system that we can dial in an immense amount of comfort. It's a very complex system, but the whole, what the rider gets, the whole point is that the system will decide for you exactly the suspension adjustments that you need at every point in time. It recognizes when you're braking for a corner, when you're driving out of a corner, when you're riding in a straight line or going around a corner, and it will give an appropriate damper setting for you. You can dial in your own weight and it'll adjust the suspension for that. And the harder you ride, the more support it gives you.
Right. So I know it's got three sort of base presets. You have comfort, you have normal, and you have dynamic, and those can also be tied to the ride modes. But within those, you know, presets or any of the ride modes, there's a wide range of adjustability. You were talking about braking support, cornering support, acceleration support. There's a wide range of things that you can do to dial it in. And is it pretty user-friendly in terms of that customization?
It's really easy. We've got an objective-based tuning interface. That's Öhlins terminology, but what that means is the rider can tell the system what outcome they want, and the system decides what to do. Right. You don't have to think, I need 2 clicks rebound damping, I need 3 clicks of compression damping. None of that. You can say, I want more braking support. Right. When I hit the brakes, I want the bike to dive less quickly. I want it to be more composed. You can just go up a couple of clicks and it'll give you that. And as you said, there are 7 separate event-based menus that you can choose exactly how you want them to feel. You're going to spend some time finding that, or you can take our presets, which will work really, really well for you. So it gives you the opportunity to dial it in for a circuit or for your personal preference, or you can just trust our 3 main settings and it'll work really, really well for you.
Right. So the electronics, of course, are controlling how the system responds in real time to conditions, to events, and so forth. Within the fork and the shock themselves, there's new spool valve technology. So tell us about how that changes the character of the suspension.
Okay, well, the spool valve allows much wider range of adjustment and a much faster adjustment rate. So that's a game changer. That really does allow you to put suspension settings onto the bike for certain scenarios that, if that was your base setting for a bike, a standard bike with clickers, would be unrideable. Right. But for that scenario, and a good example always is very hard braking, and you'll get this tomorrow at the end of the straight here. Right. Maximum braking, you're going to be putting compression damping on the forks that would be unrideable until you get that 100% weight transfer on the front end. So it allows us to do things quicker and with a wider range of adjustment than things you could never do before. Right.
Well, for a sport bike that makes 180 horsepower, it's got, top shelf components, is one of the things that about my impression of riding today was actually how comfortable it is. Not just the seat, but in terms of the suspension in particular. I know it was in rain mode, it had the base setting would be comfort. And it really, we're on rural roads that had a lot of imperfections and dips and changes and so forth. And again, on wet roads, really want to make sure that, the tires are staying in contact with the ground. That's It just felt like, there is the magic carpet ride sort of experience that you can get with semi-active suspension, but it was, on another level. I think it was really just in terms of confidence, because again, I'm on unfamiliar roads. I'm on a bike I haven't ridden in a long time, or at least not this version of it. Yeah. And it's in less than ideal conditions. And I felt pretty confident.
That's our objective. So I'm glad that's what you felt. Right. So it's a remarkable system. It's really good. We've obviously tuned it. It's not something that we get given, but we've got the ability with the hardware and the software that Öhlins provide to actually dial in exactly the feel we want from the bike for each of those setups. And yeah, I think it does it pretty well.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the other electronics in the suite. So the suspension clearly is a huge, leap forward for the Speed Triple, but you've also got some other systems that have been added. You've had ride modes before, but you've got some new electronic systems, rider aids. Talk about some of those.
Okay. Well, as you said, we've got the things we've had before. So the rider modes are great because you can tune them and customize them, and it'll be remembered every time you go back to them. And that they're presets effectively of combinations of suspension, throttle map, ABS settings, and traction control. Really useful. We've got optimized cornering, ABS and traction control as well for the road. So that gives you a different approach to braking and traction control. We've got a way of predicting and then reacting to what's happening on the road at every angle of lean. So that's really good. But the new features, we've got front wheel lift control. Now, that's a very sophisticated system, and you're about to have a go at trying that.
Right.
Actively, yeah. And what it allows you to do with 4 settings is select the maximum height you'd like that front wheel to come to. Now, this is a great example. We're at Portimao circuit. There's a lot of elevation change. We've got a lot of torque, a lot of power. The front wheel is coming off the floor. Right. There's no way you can ride this circuit at pace and not lift the front wheel. But if you have it in setting 1, that'll keep that front wheel just hovering off the ground. Okay, that'll give you maximum forward acceleration. It's a real performance aid. You can take 3 more steps and let that front wheel come up more for fun.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and truly, it does give you another connection with just how much performance you have, and it's really confidence inspiring. We've been using it on a wet pit straight here, rooster tails off the
right.
Okay, they're race rain tires,
sure,
but the system's working beautifully, and it's giving people confidence. You're controlling the wheelie, you're controlling it, but it's more controllable than it would be without the system.
Well, the thing about electronics, modern rider aids is, I think of them as kind of a safety net. Is, if somebody, there's always the unexpected, and of course that's where ABS, traction control, comes in, particularly in the street, whatever it is, something, sand on the road or something like that. But there's also sometimes somebody just gets a little bit carried away, gets a little bit excited. And so something like, limiting the degree that the front wheel will come up would prevent from looping or going over, something like that is, no system is 100%, error proof, but it can really provide a lot of safety or additional margin of safety for riders. But at the same time, as you said at the very beginning, the whole idea is for it not to be intrusive, is so that it enhances the experience, but it doesn't get in the way.
It's not intrusive, and it's confidence inspiring. Okay, that's it. And it is. Right. I mean, we've been exploring the performance of the bike in the wet.
Right.
That's brilliant, isn't it? That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Oh, and as you said, you feel confident doing it.
Right. So one of the things I've wanted to ask you, I've been testing a lot of Triumphs over the years, and there's something, again, this is a top shelf sport bike. You've got adventure bikes. You've got something like the Rocket 3, which is just this big muscle cruiser. You've got things like the Bonneville. There's a wide range of motorcycles in Triumph's lineup. But I have to say, of all the manufacturers' bikes that I've ridden, there seems to be like this common thread amongst them that there's like a baked-in user friendliness. I don't know really how else to describe it, but that you can get on an unfamiliar motorcycle and a lot of things just sort of make sense. As a chief engineer, is that something that you try to design into the motorcycles, or is it?
Yes, absolutely. Our design philosophy is to make the bikes absolutely intuitive to ride. Okay, there's so much work goes in. We design mechanical components, we design the whole bike to work together, but the bikes really come alive when we've got our expert test riders dial in the various areas of the bike and build it, create this whole bike and the bike experience that you get to ride. And yeah, it's absolutely crucial. We're all riders.
Absolutely.
It's all about riding, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's one motorbike.
Right.
And having everything working seamlessly together is what it's all about.
Right. So we're at day 2 of the 2025 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS press launch. We're actually having a little bit of a break in the rain. It's been raining most of the day, and the bikes we're riding are actually, they've got Pirelli World Superbike rain tires on them. And I have to say, it's been a really interesting experience to ride on a wet track with full-on rain tires. First experience for me. I've never actually ridden at this Portimao track, so I'm learning the track, but also able to lean this bike over pretty far on full-on rain tires. Yesterday we had our street ride. Today is the track test. Both days it's been raining. Now that's clearly not ideal testing conditions. Normally you would want dry roads, you want a dry track. You can really get the feel for the handling, the braking and so forth. But actually it really is a good way to test some of the new features of the Speed Triple. So the new electronics are a big part of the update for 2025. So in addition to the ride modes they've had before, they've added a new front wheel lift control, so wheelie control. There is a brake slide assist in track mode, and there's also an engine braking control. So those are some things that you can set yourself. But really it's the Öhlins Smart SE3 semi-active suspension that's probably the most impressive. We talked to Stuart Wood, chief engineer for Triumph. He really talked about some of the details of the Öhlins suspension. But the thing about this suspension is it really, it adapts to whatever the situation is, whether you're braking, whether you're accelerating, whether you're leaned over in a corner. Even there's a cruising support where if you're just riding down the road, and it really adapts really to any given situation in a way that, for somebody like me at a brand new track in the rain, I'm actually be able to ride with quite a bit of confidence because the chassis remains stable. It doesn't dive under braking. It doesn't squat under acceleration. It was pretty amazing. So even though this bike has a rain mode, which we used most of the day yesterday on the wet streets, we really today had it in road mode, because in rain mode, it cuts power to about 100 horsepower, but max horsepower for this bike in all the other modes is 180 horsepower. That's about 3 horsepower more than last year. And it's also got 94 foot-pounds of torque, which is up about 2 foot-pounds from last year. There's a freer flowing exhaust that's allowed them to get a little bit more power out of it. But when we're on this track, we're able to ride on the straights, we really want to be able to feel the acceleration, feel the punch. So we've been in road mode. And so that has really allowed us to get a sense of what this bike is like. And actually, it's really fantastic, even on a wet track. We also had an opportunity to test the wheelie mode, really just under controlled conditions. There's a rise coming onto the front straight here at the Portimao track. Really get it in second gear, get it to about 7,000 RPM, and just pin it. And there's 4 levels. You can set it to 1, which it's really not going to come up much at all. Then 2, 3, and 4 progressively higher. So whatever that level is, you just pin it, keep it in there, and it'll stay at that level. So this is the 31st year that they've made the bike. It celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2024. It's become a really, really refined, very powerful, very state-of-the-art sport bike. Whereas it really kind of invented the street fighter category, now it's really, it's the most sophisticated motorcycle in Triumph's lineup. And I have to say, it's an absolute pleasure to ride. The seating position, of course, as a naked sport bike, it's more upright than a more tucked position in most sport bikes. It's got a wider, flatter handlebar than it did last year. So it gives you a little bit more sense of control tipping into corners. So overall, this has really been an interesting test. Like I said, 2 days of rain is typically, some people would just stay home, but we're here in Portugal. We've come to test this bike, and it's actually showed us how composed and how controlled this bike can be regardless of the situations, and it can feel very comfortable. Again, learning a new track, learning roads in Portugal, and really getting a sense of what this bike is capable of doing, but also feeling that safe, controlled, and it's not some sort of untamed beast to ride. So the Speed Triple 1200 RS, it comes in 3 colors. In the US, it's $19,995 is the retail price, and you really get a heck of a lot for the money. The other motorcycles that you can buy with Öhlins Smart SE3 suspension are much more expensive motorcycles. So Triumph has really tried to make sure that they can give not only a fantastic high-end motorcycle, but also really good value to the customer. So we're gonna have a full review on ridermagazine.com. Like I said, this has really been an interesting experience. We'll have more details about what the tech details are for this motorcycle, some more riding impressions at ridermagazine.com. If you have any comments, drop them down below. Have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. And please go ahead and subscribe, and thanks for watching.